You know, some of you are maybe too young to remember that there was a time when it wasn't considered a compliment to call someone an entrepreneur. You know, it was actually a put down. You think, oh yeah, he's a real entrepreneur, like he had gold watches up his arm. You know, business magazines and business publications generally just paid no attention to the entrepreneurial part of the economy. That's actually why Bernie Goldhurst started Inc. magazine in the first place. That was beginning to change in 1983, and I like to think that Inc. had something to do with it. Frankly, I think Ronald Reagan had something to do with it. But mainly it was happening because of the companies and their leaders who were really sort of changing the perception in the public mind of what entrepreneurship was. And I, by a tremendous stroke of fortune, wound up in Inc. magazine at a time when a lot of those companies and their leaders were still pretty young. I mean, I'm talking about Bill Gates at Microsoft, you know, Steve Jobs at Apple, Anita Roddick at The Body Shop, Yvonne Chouinard at Patagonia, Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield at Ben & Jerry's, Tom Golisano at Paychex. I mean, I could go on and on. And you know, it was just like really just a breathtaking moment in business history, and I happened to land right in the middle of it. And I began to notice then that some of these companies, the greatest companies, had something very, very special going for them. You know, it's not just that they were successful, although they were all successful by the standard measures of business success. There was something else happening in these companies that I didn't have a name for at the time, but it was very palpable. It was something that I could recognize. I do have a name for it now. I call it mojo. And by mojo, I mean the business equivalent of charisma. You know, when a leader has charisma, you want to follow him or her. When a business has charisma, you want to be associated with that business. You want to buy from it. You want to sell to it. You want to work for it. You want to wear its T-shirts and its caps. If the business happens to be Harley Davidson, you probably want to get its logo tattooed on your arm. But that is what it's really the feeling that you get when you're in the presence of greatness in business. Now, I've had the pleasure and the privilege of spending most of the last 4 years around companies that have tons of mojo, and I've written about 14 of them in my book, Small Giants. The subtitle of that book, as Joel mentioned, is Companies That Choose to Be Great Instead of Big. Now, I would be willing to bet that that's a choice some of you don't want to make. You just as soon be great and big, which is fine, if that's, you know, if you can pull it off. But I still think that even those companies have a lot to learn from the companies that I write about. Why? Because in business, it's very easy to confuse greatness with getting big very fast. And when you avoid that problem when you decide that you're going to focus on companies that have made a deliberate decision not to get as big as possible, as fast as possible. What these companies do have in common, however, is that they are the best and they strive to be the best at what they do and to contribute something great and unique to the world. That is one of the criteria that I used in selecting them. I wanted companies that were recognized in their industry by their peers and by their competitors, in other words, by the people who knew them best for being the cream of the crop. I also wanted companies that had been recognized outside their industries for the contributions that they had made to the world. And finally, I wanted companies that had been around for a while. I didn't want companies that had sort of gotten lucky and shown up at the right place at the right time. I wanted companies that had been through all of the ups and downs of business and that had managed to remain profitable